Hello, hello, good evening. How are you all doing? Hopefully not too tired after quite a long day. I hope you're ready, more importantly, to get stuck into a good quality South African braai this afternoon, and then hopefully some relaxation tomorrow. On a more formal note, we've had 3 days of the GCARD3 conference. It's been very busy and productive. We heard a roundup earlier, just as a reflection on the sessions and discussions. Now, as a final point of call, we're holding this panel session just to share some thoughts and reflections on the third GCARD event. So starting with introductions, my name is Genevieve Thompson. I am a research scientist or lab rat, and I work for the Agricultural Research Council, the co-hosts of GCARD3. I've worn a slightly different hat this week, and I was part of a social media boot camp, and hence me now sitting on the couch with you this evening. With that, I'll hand over to Latoya.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Latoya Lewis. I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. I am employed as a value chain manager in Jamaica with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries over there. I am in the capacity here as a social reporter, however, with the young professionals for agricultural development. Welcome. What we're going to do, we're going to ask 4 main questions to the 5 stakeholders, because we all represent key perspectives of key stakeholders within the agricultural context. However, before we begin, we'd like to give you all the opportunity to introduce yourselves, starting from Melissa.
Thank you very much. My name's Melissa Wood. I'm the General Manager of Global Programs for the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research. So we fund partnerships between researchers in Australia and international researchers with researchers in developing countries to achieve more sustainable agriculture and food security.
Welcome.
So my name is Ylva Hilber. I'm Deputy Director General for Research at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture based in Nigeria, one of the CGIAR institutes.
Thank you. My name is Lana, and I'm here representing a student and alumni PhD program, and as well the young professionals and the women.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Esther Penunia. I am here for the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development. We are an alliance of national farmers organizations, and we have 17 members in 13 countries in Asia, representing 12 million small-scale women and men and young family farmers, fishers, and indigenous peoples.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
My name is Noor. I work for the Acumen Fund, basically lead Acumen's work in the agriculture sector globally. Acumen invests in early-stage innovative businesses that provide essential goods and services to the poor. We have a strong interest in agriculture. We invest in South Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
Okay, it's indeed a pleasure to have you all here today. Thank you for being with us. So, this afternoon's closing plenary included many optimistic thoughts and energies on GCARD3 and the key messages delivered to us throughout the dialogue. Therefore, in 30 seconds, I ask to each panelist, are you optimistic about the future of our global agri-food systems? And please do tell us why. To each one, starting with Melissa, please.
It's a very good question. Am I optimistic? Yes. Why? Because we have no other choice. I think we've got sufficient talent amongst all the different sectors that need to be involved in the agri-food systems. And particularly, I think, because of the very impressive input that we've had over this conference by youth who really have the future of agri-systems in their hands, and they're highly motivated and calling us to they're challenging us with what we're doing, and I'm confident that they're going to be able to work with us to improve the systems that we currently have and solve the challenges.
It's really good to hear.
Glad you have a lot of faith in us. There's no pressure.
Yeah. Well, I can but agree with Melissa. Yes, you have to be optimistic. And representing the CGIAR and research, I feel that the new portfolio of CGIAR research programs that we're launching in January 2017, of which 8 are focusing particularly on agri-food systems, will play an important role. And this event, the GCARD, has certainly shown that there are plenty of key partners that we will work with to make this happen.
Great.
Lana?
Thank you. Yes, I have to agree with both statements, and I am optimistic as well, because food systems are very important, and they actually play a key role in every nation of our world. So I'm glad that this GCARD as well, in the context of the food supply chains and agri-food system, actually brought more concretely the role of youth and the role that we actually can play in improving this system. So the agri-food is definitely in the hands of small farmers, but the youth as well and the research. So very optimistic about what is going to happen in the future.
Thank you.
I am very optimistic, happy, and excited because in the GCARD, I see many collective actions that are being planned, and these collective actions are actions that will be done together by various multi-stakeholders in the agriculture research for development.
Right.
Yep, absolutely excited and thrilled to have been part of this event. I think very optimistic about the future of agri-food systems, because there are a number of important trends for us to consider when we think about the future of agri-food systems. One, we're seeing increasingly global food corporates talking about sustainability, and not just talking, but actually thinking about how to make their value chains sustainable. We at Acumen are actively working with Unilever, for instance, to make their supply chains sustainable, which is huge change from, let's say, 20 years ago, where there wasn't even a conversation around sustainability.
Okay.
I think the other key trend is that consumers are now willing to pay a price, a premium, for traceability, for sustainability, especially in more mature markets, but even in emerging markets, there's now a trend for consumers willing to pay an extra price. And that ultimately should get translated into better livelihoods for smallholder farmers. And with this kind of a platform where you're bringing stakeholders together, that dialogue between research and private sector, between NGOs and governments, should go a long way in getting us to a much better place in terms of agri-food systems than where we are today.
Yes, thank you very much to everyone here. I mean, as a young person, a farmer myself, and someone who works actively with farmers, it is indeed heartwarming to know that all stakeholders are here and we are all optimistic. Now I'll hand the floor over to Genevieve, who will.
Latoya? So going forwards, what do you think needs to change with your stakeholders and your partnerships to achieve a healthy and vibrant agri-food system? Can we start with Melissa?
So in terms of change, it doesn't need to be a radical change, it can be an incremental change. So I feel that with a lot of the partners that we work with in our research for development, we're on the right path. We just need to improve the way we're doing it and to do it more rapidly. So the sorts of things I'm referring to are the things that Noor mentioned about partnerships and ensuring that we have the right partners coming together, both from the public sector and the private sector and the smallholder farmer sector and the NGOs to build much stronger and sustainable value chains. And we're doing that already. There's plenty of examples where that's happening. But unfortunately, at this point, it's small pockets. And what we want to do is get much larger scale out of these really successful models that have been tested. So that's one change, is building stronger relationships by the partners that need to come together to deliver these things, because no one sector can do it on their own.
Absolutely.
And the second one, I think, is a stronger focus on nutrition and the role that agriculture can play in people's health. Okay. So over the last 5 or so years, we've seen the agriculture community and the health and epidemiology community come together through nutrition, because agriculture is now being recognised as a source of, a big source of non-communicable diseases, which is costing many countries lots of money, and it's something that can be prevented. And the health community realises they need to come to the agriculture community and vice versa. And we're seeing a lot more work with those two people coming together and getting more healthy foods, greater access to more diverse crops, greater focus on Indigenous foods within communities that can have a really long-lasting impact on the communities at large.
Okay, great. Thanks, Melissa. I'd like to hear from Esther on the same question from the perspective of a farmer.
I think I'm very happy also, and then I think there should be change in our attitude, that the farmers can now be more proactive in shaping their future through grassroots foresight work. We should be more proactive also in getting partnerships from the various stakeholders, build trust and build confidence in partnering with research institutes, for example, with private sector, with governments, with other NGOs, with research institutes, so that we will be able to build our capacities to shape the future that we want.
Okay, and do you think there's already some shift that's taken place to develop those relationships?
Yes, of course. I think in this GCARD, what we are excited about is that one collective action that was from the Theme 5 was to really do grassroots foresight work, and this will be done by all stakeholders and even the regional fora.
Great. Okay, so well, we've had 3 days of presentations and discussions for GCARD3. The GCARD3 is actually an 18-month process leading up until this point. What do you see as the main outcomes of GCARD3 that is going to make, or is likely to make, that 18-month process worthwhile? Ilva, can we hear from you first?
Well, as from the CGIAR perspective, and it's one of the centers leading the site integration process in 3 countries, in Nigeria, Tanzania, and DRC, this has been part of our getting ready for GCARD3. And I think the panel discussion we had on Wednesday morning, where we saw the examples from different countries, how the site integration process or the national consultations, which is the starting point for a longer process, how they panned out. I think that was a key moment, as I've felt, where we could learn from each other, and we see that this is an ongoing process in many countries, in 20 countries, and it's a starting point, and we will see that it will work out differently in different countries depending on the stakeholders and partners that engage. But it is going to be an important process for the continued engagement between research, farmers, organizations, national systems, for us in the CRPs to align with national priorities and ongoing research initiatives within agricultural sector.
And do you feel like the partnerships that you've developed leading up until GCARD3 will be continued until GCARD4?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the national consultations built on old partnerships and expansion of partnerships. And I think it's going to be very important that we continue this process, and that GCARD4 will not be the next event when we talk about it, but it's going to be a continued engagement, not only from the CGIAR, but certainly from all partners. I think that is absolutely necessary to make this successful.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
And what about Noor? Noor, what do you think?
What do you think, Noor? Noor's new to the team, so it's his first GCARD event.
Yeah, so it's my first sort of participation in a GCARD event. For me, coming from the private sector, the first day was a little overwhelming, the first few hours, because You have a lot of researchers, people from the nonprofit sector, they speak a different language.
They do.
And so I was like, how am I going to sort of interact and get something out of this process? And I think that's the beauty of this platform and the process that, that was initiated leading up to this event, which is to get stakeholders from different perspectives, talking to each other and understanding each other's perspective. And that's what I take away as a private sector guy from this process, a better understanding of the challenges within the research systems, being able to share my perspective from the work that we do, which is invest in early stage enterprises, and then think about how do we leverage all the incredible work that's happening on the research side into the work that we do. Okay. So I think it's been an incredible sort of process as well as the final event.
Okay, Lana, go ahead.
Can I just wrap it up a little bit? Like for me, the most important outcomes of this GCARD3 are actually the 3 key elements that have been brought to the front line, and that would be definitely the capacity building. The second one would be teaming up, and the third one would be as well the youth. So we saw how all those teams are trying to kind of like wrap around those main 3 points, and the most important is that those 3 points become the agenda for the future action. So when we come back to our institutions where we belong, those are the key. This is actually the core where I believe we are going to, kind of like format our future activities. So I think this GCARD3 did a great job in bringing those 3 points together.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to a point that Esther made. I heard you mention that there was a call for collective action. A lot of these conferences are more about blah, blah than boom, boom, where dialogue isn't really readily converted into action. So what will you or your organization do to take the outcome of GCARD3 forward? Could you give us 1 or 2 concrete actions that you commit to after the conference? And this is a question that's open to everyone. Yes, so please, Melissa.
So this is my first GCARD as well.
Okay.
And I really didn't have a very clear idea about how the conference would unfold. So I liked the way that it started off with a lot of dialogue and interaction and softer things, but I also liked the way we ended with hard collective action. And the sessions this afternoon really turned a lot of the dialogue and discussion into a consensus on how to take it forward. So the discussion I was in developed 3 collective action, and one of which was something that is really relevant to my organisation and to me as a donor organisation, as well as all the other people there. And that was to look at how it was about measuring impact and how we can share our knowledge and work together by forming a platform to help each of us relate the work that we're doing and the outcomes that we're funding and delivering, and how we can link those to our obligations under the SDGs and our reporting under the SDGs. So it's early days for all of us. We're just learning and working at how our priorities and goals can be mapped to the SDGs, and rather than each of us go back home and work in our individual silos, we've decided to come together and work collectively on this issue in order to be more successful at the end of the day.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a follow-up question there? Why do you think it's taken us so long to come together as a collective group at events like this?
We have to wrap up.
Around the SDGs, or
Yeah.
well, the SDGs are just new, so we're all. It's something that we're all starting to look at, and I imagine the same thing will apply to our COP21 reporting obligations.
Yeah.
So it's very timely, actually, that we've had this opportunity to come together to discuss these things and other things. It's not that we don't come together; we do, but this is a particular space that's been provided to us for 3 days to come together and really focus on it and not really think about anything else. It's been facilitated perfectly to allow us to do that, and there's been a little bit of pressure on the end for us to turn that discussion into concrete action, and I think all of that is a really good recipe for taking things away that we've all signed up with and are very motivated to continue on when we get back to our homes.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to take one last question and one last response. And I'd really like to hear from the researcher. And the researchers, you know, how it's going to move, you know, in terms of the dialogue to action.
Well, we're going to do our research, of course, and align with the key topics that have been highlighted in this meeting, but also that is outlined in our CGIAR research programs. We want to do it as efficiently as possible, and I think the site integration process will allow us to do that, to coordinate better our efforts at a national level. But also to align better with national priorities, with the requests from stakeholders, so as to ensure that we keep science relevant.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for being here and taking the time to actually be here with us to have this closing out discussion. I'll hand over to Genevieve.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was some interesting thoughts. I was very interested to hear Lana's presentation earlier this afternoon from the perspective of the scientists and how she works with different institutes to transfer that information in a way that's tangible for companies, for someone like Noah, and for donors in a way that you can actually easily understand it. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and have a lovely evening.